There's two things going on here, more than two, but two I want to focus on. One is the effort at sabotage that Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and the Democrat Party are involved in now. As I speak, anyway, they're trying to sabotage this deal in the Senate, where the Republicans and the Democrats were about to vote on it, and then Pelosi flies back into town after recess and decides no. And she's throwing a bunch of poison pills in there to advance her left-wing agenda, expand unionization, and on and on and on, which we'll get to in a little bit. Then it's the other channel or path that I'm worried about. That is good intentions but bad decisions. I keep hearing people, and particularly governors, say, we want to keep essential jobs and businesses open, but non-essential jobs, people should stay home. Non-essential businesses should shut down. What is a non-essential job and a non-essential business? You might think you can list them. These governors and their bureaucrats might think they can list them, but you really can't. I'm gravely concerned, and I talked about this on radio last week, especially Thursday and Friday, that we're nuking the economy all over the country in every corner, when in fact our focus should be to nuke the areas, the communities, and by nuke, I'm not talking about actual nukes. I'm talking about the focus of resources, healthcare resources, and assistance to those areas of the country which are really the problem. Washington State, California, New York, and a few other pockets. Maybe pick the top 10 and just hammer the hell out of them with everything we have and provide them with the resources we need. Why are they shutting down, or they were, rest stops in Pennsylvania, where truckers have nowhere to eat, nowhere to stop, to go to the restrooms and so forth? That first broke on my radio show last week, and now the liberal governor, the Democrat in Pennsylvania, has lifted that. And what seems to be happening is the press is celebrating governors who are taking the most extreme actions. And now what's happening in Congress is you have people like Nancy Pelosi demanding that the president exercise the full force of the Defense Production Act of 1950, the Stafford Act. What that would mean is the president of the United States could nationalize industries. He could dictate what assembly lines are going to produce. And as the president said yesterday, and he has had brilliant press conferences as far as I'm concerned, he's really shown his leadership. He said, we don't know what industries can do what. They don't even know if they can do certain things. All that would happen if the president did what Pelosi demands is create enormous economic dislocation. So even the progress we're making in the medical field, in the medical supply field, and other areas would come to a halt, because now the federal government run it. And of course, this is Pelosi's mentality. First, they call the president a dictator. Now they act like they really want a dictator. Not that they want Trump as the dictator, but they want all these protections against a centralized, massive federal leviathan removed. And they want Trump to remove it. So when they come into office, there it is. He will have set the precedent. But I note the president's been very careful about this, and he talked about it yesterday, that it's enormous power and that he needs to weigh the consequences and balance the outcomes. And as he tweeted midnight last night, he doesn't want the cure to be worse than the problem. This is a very measured, prudential man, despite the effort over the last 3 years, even longer, to try and paint the president as irrational, rash, uninformed, and all the rest. I did my interview on Fox last night with the Vice President and Dr. Fauci. I hope you saw it. Dr. Fauci said 36 years in his position, 50 years in federal government public health, that this was very impressive, that the president is acting off of the science. He's engaged, they're working 20 hours a day and so forth. And I asked him those questions in order to address the myth that the left, the media, the Democrats, one and the same are putting out there. But let me circle back. I had a dear friend of mine, you know who it is. And don't guess, you know a lot of my dear friends, but a dear friend of mine and I over the weekend, we're really going at it, politely, but going at it. And this dear friend was saying, you know, just essential jobs. And I said, what's an essential job? What's a non-essential job? And honestly, he couldn't tell me. So I get very nervous about this. So I thought it's time to revisit a story that was first told in the 1950s by Leonard E. Read of the Free Foundation. I want you to check this out. Some of you have seen this here before, although it's been a while. I've also played it on radio. It's called iPencil. And there's a reason we're going to spend some time on this. iPencil. So sit back and take a look. Go.
iPencil by Leonard E. Reed. I am a pencil, the ordinary wooden pencil familiar to all boys and girls and adults who can read and write. Writing is both my vocation and my avocation. That's all I do. You may wonder why I should write a genealogy. Well, to begin with, my story is interesting. And next, I am a mystery, more so than a tree or a sunset or even a flash of lightning. But sadly, I am taken for granted by those who use me, as if I were a mere incident and without background. This supercilious attitude relegates me to the level of the commonplace. This is a species of the grievous error in which mankind cannot too long persist without peril. For the wise G.K. Chesterton observed, "We are perishing for want of wonder, not for want of wonders." iPencil, simple though I appear to be, merit your wonder and awe, a claim I shall attempt to prove. In fact, if you can understand me, no, that's too much to ask of anyone. If you can become aware of the miraculousness which I symbolize, you can help save the freedom mankind is so unhappily losing. I have a profound lesson to teach. And I can teach this lesson better than can an automobile or an airplane or a mechanical dishwasher because I am seemingly so simple. Simple. Yet not a single person on the face of this earth knows how to make me. This sounds fantastic, doesn't it? Especially when it is realized there are about 1.5 billion of my kind produced in the USA each year. Pick me up and look me over. What do you see? Not much meets the eye. There's some wood, lacquer, and printed labeling, graphite lead, a bit of metal, and an eraser. Innumerable antecedents. Just as you cannot trace your family tree back very far, so it is impossible for me to name and explain all my antecedents. But I would like to suggest enough of them to impress upon you the richness and the complexity of my background. My family tree begins with what in fact is a tree. A cedar of straight grain that grows in Northern California and Oregon. Now contemplate all the saws and trucks and rope and the countless other gear used in harvesting and carting the cedar logs to the railroad siding. Think of all the persons and the numberless skills that went into their fabrication. The mining of ore, the making of steel and its refinement into saws, axes, motors, the growing of hemp and bringing it through all the stages to heavy and strong rope, the logging camps with their beds and mess halls, the cookery and the raising of all the foods. Why, untold thousands of persons had a hand in every cup of coffee the loggers drink. The logs are shipped to a mill in San Leandro, California. Can you imagine the individual who makes flat cars and rails and railroad engines and who construct and install the communication systems incidental thereto? These legions are among my antecedents. Consider the millwork in San Leandro. The cedar logs are cut into small, pencil-thin slats less than 1/4 of an inch in thickness. These are kiln-dried and then tinted for the same reason women put rouge on their faces. People prefer that I look pretty, not a pallid white. The slats are waxed and kiln-dried again. How many skills went into the making of the tint and the kilns, into supplying the heat and the light and the power, the belts, motors, and all the other things a mill requires. Sweepers in the mill among my ancestors? Yes, and included are the men who poured the concrete for the dam of the Pacific Gas and Electric Company hydro plant, which supplies the mill's power. Don't overlook the ancestors, present and distant, who have had a hand in transporting 60 carloads of slats across the nation. Once in the pencil factory, $4 million in machinery and building, all capital accumulated by thrifty and saving parents of mine. Each slat is given 8 grooves by a complex machine, after which another machine lays leads in every other slat, applies glue, and places another slat atop. A lead sandwich, so to speak. 7 brothers and I are mechanically carved from this wood clinch sandwich. My lead itself, it contains no lead at all, is complex. The graphite is mined in Ceylon, Sri Lanka. Consider these miners, and those who make their many tools, and the makers of the paper sacks in which the graphite is shipped, and those who make the strings that tie the sacks, and those who put them aboard the ships, and those who make the ships. Even the lighthouse keeper along the way assisted in my birth, in the harbor pilots. The graphite is mixed with clay from Mississippi, in which ammonium hydroxide is used in the refining process. Then wetting agents are added, such as sulfonated tallow, animal fats chemically reacted with sulfuric acid. After passing through numerous machines, the mixture finally appears as endless extrusions, as from a sausage grinder, cut to size, dried, and baked for several hours at 1,850 degrees Fahrenheit. To increase their strength and smoothness, the leads are treated with a hot mixture which includes candelilla wax from Mexico, paraffin wax, and hydrogenated natural fats. My cedar receives 6 coats of lacquer. Do you know all the ingredients of lacquer? Who would think that the growers of castor beans and the refiners of castor oil are a part of it? They are. Why, even the processes by which the lacquer is made a beautiful yellow involve the skills of more persons than one can enumerate. Observe the labeling. That's a film formed by applying heat to carbon black mixed with resins. How do you make resins, and what, pray, is carbon black? My bit of metal, the ferrule, is brass. Think of all the persons who mine zinc and copper, and those who have the skills to make shiny sheet brass from these products of nature. Those black rings on my ferrule are black nickel. What is black nickel and how is it applied? The complete story of why the center of my ferrule has no black nickel on it would take pages to explain. Then there is my crowning glory, inelegantly referred to in the trade as the plug, the part man uses to erase the errors he makes with me. An ingredient called factus is what does the erasing. It is a rubber-like product made by reacting rapeseed oil from the Dutch East Indies, Indonesia, with sulfur chloride. Rubber, contrary to the common notion, is only for binding purposes. Then, too, there are numerous vulcanizing and accelerating agents. The pumice comes from Italy, and the pigment which gives the plug its color is cadmium sulfide. No one knows. Does anyone wish to challenge my earlier assertion that no single person on the face of this earth knows how to make me? Actually, millions of human beings have had a hand in my creation, no one of whom even knows more than a few of the others. Now, you may say that I go too far in relating the picker of a coffee berry in far-off Brazil and food growers elsewhere to my creation, that this is an extreme position. I shall stand by my claim. There isn't a single person in all these millions, including the president of the pencil company, who contributes to more than a tiny infinitesimal bit of know-how. From the standpoint of know-how, the only difference between the miner of graphite in Ceylon and the logger in Oregon is the type of know-how. Neither the miner nor the logger can be dispensed with, any more than can the chemist at the factory or the worker in the oil field, paraffin being a byproduct of petroleum. Here is an astounding fact. Neither the worker in the oil field, nor the chemist, nor the digger of graphite or clay, nor any who mans or makes the ships or trains or trucks, nor the one who runs the machine that does the knurling on my bit of metal, nor the president of the company performs his singular task because he wants me. Each one wants me less, perhaps, than does a child in the first grade. Indeed, there are some among this vast multitude who never saw a pencil, nor would they know how to use one. Their motivation is other than me. Perhaps it is something like this. Each of these millions see that he can thus exchange his tiny know-how for the goods and services he needs or wants. I may or may not be among these items. No mastermind. There is a fact still more astounding. The absence of a mastermind, or anyone dictating or forcibly directing these countless actions which brings me into being. No trace of such a person can be found. Instead, we find the invisible hand at work. This is the mystery to which I earlier referred. It has been said that only God can make a tree. Why do we agree with this? Isn't it because we realize that we ourselves could not make one? Indeed, can we even describe a tree? We cannot, except in superficial terms. We can say, for instance, that a certain molecular configuration manifests itself as a tree. But what mind is there among men that could even record, let alone direct, the constant changes in molecules that transpire in the lifespan of a tree? Such a feat is utterly unthinkable. I, pencil, am a complex combination of miracles, a tree, zinc, copper, graphite, and so on. But to these miracles which manifest themselves in nature, an even more extraordinary miracle has been added: the configuration of creative human energies. Millions of tiny know-hows configurating naturally and spontaneously in response to human necessity and desire, and in the absence of any human masterminding. Since only God can make a tree, I insist that only God could make me. Man can no more direct these millions of know-hows to bring me into being than he can put molecules together to create a tree. The above is what I meant when writing, if you can become aware of the miraculousness which I symbolize, you can help save the freedom mankind is so unhappily losing. For if one is aware that these know-hows will naturally, yes, automatically arrange themselves into creative and productive patterns in response to human necessity and demand, that is, in the absence of governmental or any other coercive masterminding, then one will possess an absolutely essential ingredient for freedom.
All right, let's stop there. So you get the drift. It's really not possible to say who and who is not essential when it comes to work.